Hi, this is One from the K-Sams, and welcome to part 1 of comparing my old laptop, the Asus ROG Chimera G703vi, with my new laptop, the Asus ROG Zephyrus Duo 16. In this part, I'll be comparing some of the features of those two laptops, not every single feature, while the next part, I'll be doing a performance test of the two laptops. In this video, I'll be covering the design, the specs, the display, the second screen, the ports, and the fans. Let's get into it. The lid of the G703 is an uncoated silver metal lid. It has a diagonal indent that runs down the middle, and the logo is an RGB light. The chunky looking hinge has some copper with the words Republic of Gamers on it. The Duo 16 on the other hand is a dark grey metal lid with a matte finish on it. The logo doesn't have any RGBs. Instead, you have this nice shiny purple metal. You can also see it on the diagonal stripe in the centre, this time with the words Republic of Gamers on it. Below the stripe, you see a subtle dot matrix pattern. The hinge is slimmer and can hide away when you open the lid. The chassis of the G703 is very chunky, with the dark grey plastic and big air vents. The back of the chassis is copper-colored plastic, not actually copper. The Duo 16 on the other hand looks slim, and it's the same colour as the lid. It has smaller air vents, and it's an all-metal design. For the internals, the G703 has the generic laptop layout that most laptops use. The keyboard on the top half of the laptop deck, while the bottom half is for the touchpad with separate left and right click buttons and wrist rest. The bezels around the screen are thick, which adds to the tankiness of the laptop. The bottom bezel has the logo on it. The Duo 16 on the other hand has a much more futuristic look. The top half of the laptop deck is taken up by a second screen, more on that later, forcing the keyboard to the bottom half. The smaller touchpad is placed to the right of the keyboard, because the majority of people are right-handed, including me. The touchpad has the left click and right click buttons on the bottom, and you can convert it into a calculator. There's a special button for that. The laptop also came with an external wrist rest, since there's no space for one on the laptop deck. The bezels around the screen are much slimmer than the G703, adding to the futuristic look. The weight. The G703 weighs 4.7 kilos, while the Duo 16 weighs 2.6 kilos. The power brick is smaller on the Duo 16 than the G703. Starting off with the G703, the OS is Windows 10 and unable to upgrade to Windows 11. The CPU is an Intel i7-7820HK with 4 cores and 8 threads at a base clock speed of 2.9 GHz. The GPU is an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1080 with 8 GB of VRAM. It has 32 GB of RAM. Finally, for storage, it has a 512 GB solid-state drive and a 1 TB hard disk drive. Moving on to the Duo 16, the OS is Windows 11. The CPU is an AMD's Ryzen 9 6900HX with 8 cores and 16 threads and a base clock of 3.3 GHz. The GPU is an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3080 with 8 GB of VRAM. It can support Minecraft RTX. It has 32GB of RAM. Finally, for storage, it only has a 1TB solid state drive, both an upgrade, more space on C drive, and a downgrade, less overall storage. I'll be able to upgrade it though, if only one of the 2 storage slots are used. The Duo 16 also has something called the multiplexing switch, controlled through the Armoury crate. This gives you the option to completely disable the integrated graphics for a performance boost at the cost of battery life. It can also switch between the integrated graphics and the dedicated graphics automatically for good battery life during light tasks and good performance for more intensive tasks. Or you can disable the dedicated graphics altogether. For the G703, size 17.3 inches, aspect ratio 16:9, resolution Full HD or 1920 by 1080, refresh rate 144 Hz. It was considered the first laptop to feature a refresh rate higher than 120 Hz, and the type of display, IPS matte display. For the Duo 16, size 16 inches. Here's a visual size differential. Aspect ratio 16:10. It's slightly taller than the standard 60:9 aspect ratio. Resolution Quad HD or 2560 by 1600. Refresh rate 165 Hz. And the type of display, Nebula HDR Mini LED IPS matte display. The screen looks beautiful. When playing a cycling game called Descenders, I was blown away by the clarity of the grass and purple flowers in the Descenders lobby world, and the sand ripples in a desert map compared to the G703. However, after a firmware update, I started noticing visual artifacts like dark patches, more noticeable in the dark grey and at a lower brightness. It can be fixed by setting the backlight control to one zone. All 512 dimming zones are at the same brightness, emulating an ordinary screen. Instead of multi-zone, all 512 dimming zones have their own brightness in the Armoury crate software. It also has a bit of dirty screen effect regardless of backlight control. Despite that, it still looks beautiful. I consider those minor issues and expected with experimental technology. The screen has HDR support, which only works in the multi-zone backlight control. It is more effective at a higher brightness. Let's compare one zone to multi-zone with this image with the brightness maxed out. With my old laptop, I use an external monitor as the second screen. You can see that it's to my right here, while my mic is to my left. To read the script on my external monitor, I have to turn my head away from the mic, which creates inconsistent volume. So let me demonstrate it. So this is me looking at the main screen now, and then this is me turning away from the mic onto the second monitor and reading the script. There once was a barber named Barbara who married a guy named Bob, and now turning to the main screen again. And when she had a child named Deborah, she's doing a parent's job and an appearance job. For the Duo 16, the second screen is built in and in a much more convenient spot. I didn't have to move my head that much to look down at the second screen and read the script, which reduces the volume variation a lot. So let me demonstrate that. So right now I'm looking at the main screen, and now I'm turning my head slightly to look down at the second screen to read the script. Another time, Barbara the barber went to Australia, and there she went scuba diving along the GBR, and now looking at the main screen again, and there she heard an evil guy say "Mua he he," and now in the GBR is an anemone and an enemy. The second screen is really gonna help with content creation. That's the reason why I chose this laptop. Also, unlike the previous Zephyrus Duos, the second screen moves closer to the display when opening the laptop, which makes the two displays more seamless. Starting with the G703, on the right, there's an SD card reader and two USB-A ports. There's also a Kensington lock. On the back, there's another USB-A port, an HDMI port, a mini display port, and the power plug. Finally, on the left, there's an Ethernet port, a USB-C port with Thunderbolt support, another USB-A port with a total of 4, and separate 3.5mm ports for mic and headphones. Moving on to the Giro 16. On the right, there's just a USB-C port with no Thunderbolt support. On the back, there's an Ethernet port, a USB-A port, and an HDMI port. Finally, on the left, there's the power plug, another USB-A port, another USB-C port with no Thunderbolt support, a micro SD port, and a 3.5mm combo jack. Even after over 4 years of owning the G703, it still performs very well, as you'll see next video, and I didn't notice any thermal throttling within that time. It's probably because of the huge exhaust vents on the sides of the laptop that blows out hot air. Great at winter. It also does have intake fans on the bottom of the chassis. The Giro 16 on the other hand has better intake fans than the G703 because some of those fans are underneath the second screen, which provides more airflow than just being underneath the chassis. It has smaller exhaust vents because of its slimmer chassis. Because of this, my dad helped me make this small modification to my studio. Also, instead of thermal paste, it uses a premium liquid metal called Thermal Grizzly's Conductor Knot on the CPU. It's a gallium indium compound that really helps the laptop be nice and chill while playing high-end games. The fan noise. When it's idle, the G703 still makes a little bit of noise, maybe partially because of the hard disk drive. The Giro 16 though is almost completely silent. There's just a slight high-pitched sound. There's nothing wrong with the laptop though. When the fans ramp up, they're not the quietest gaming laptops. They're quite loud, but they're still tolerable. The G703 maintains a lower pitch, while the Giro 16 will go slightly higher pitch when the fans ramp up. That's it for the feature comparison of those two laptops. In the next video, I'll be doing a performance test. If you've enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. See ya!